There we are.
Okay. There we go.
I think so.
So, about a month ago, coming up to Thanksgiving, it was either right before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving. Ms. Barbara was talking about being thankful in comparison to how traditionally we've been taught to be thankful for Thanksgiving. And so it was a few things that she actually talked about that at the time I wanted to talk a little bit more about and go a little bit more in depth on. But then Mandela passed and I was away. Away from my normal place of awareness. So what I actually wanted to speak about was gratefulness, and some of it we've talked about a little. Like I've already said, some of it we've already mentioned, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth on. So usually, many times, it's actually thought that happiness, joyous, you can think of whatever synonym that you want to use, actually equals gratefulness. So it's thought that those that are happy are grateful, and those individuals are grateful because they are actually happy. However, we know that that's not true. We know plenty of people who have a lot of things and they're not happy at all. And then on the other hand, we know a lot of people, or we know some people who experience extreme misfortune, but at the same time they're happy or they're joyous. So therefore we have to conclude that it's not actual happiness that makes you grateful. It's the other way around. Gratefulness makes you happy. Okay? So what is it that we are actually, and I was supposed to start off by asking if there was any questions and things like that. Sorry. Or
I'm supposed to.
Yeah. Well, I'll go on if you have any questions, and then we will go into transition into that. Okay, so what now? So that begs the question. And I can't remember the verse that Miss Barbara came from, unfortunately, but it was Jesus actually speaking, telling them to be thankful, and telling the disciples to be thankful in all things. Okay,
1 Thessalonians 5:18.
Okay, 1 Thessalonians 5:18.
Yeah, that's it.
She remembered it just in time.
No, I found those scribbles I told you.
Okay. So I will read that just right quick as the reference. And from the King James Version is, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. And I want to go to Young's Literal Translation right quick. In everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Okay, so that's the reference scripture that I am speaking from. Okay, so what actually is this gratefulness that we're talking about? Okay, so gratefulness is actually based upon something that is given to you freely, and you actually realize that that particular thing you did not necessarily get on your own. So it's a gift. So you're grateful and you're thankful for that gift that is actually given to you. Okay? Now, with that being said, if I were to give you something that you're actually grateful for, yet and still to go even further, it is the opportunity with that gift or that thing, whatever it may be, because it does not have to be, don't think just materialistically that it's given to you, that actually makes you grateful. Because if I were to give you something, or you were to receive something, and you cannot enjoy that thing, you would not be happy with it. It is the opportunity with that thing to enjoy that thing that actually makes you happy. Now, taking that into and please stop me if you have any questions. Taking that into consideration, that speaks more upon what Jesus is talking about, because we have an opportunity, because it's the opportunity that we are actually grateful for. And because we have an opportunity, we always have an opportunity. An opportunity is a perpetual thing that is always there in that moment to actually experience. You always have an opportunity to be grateful.
I have a question.
Sure.
Does that mean that when there are things that are distractors around us, that we pull on those things that we know we're grateful for? In other words, something may be happening right then and there that you temporarily forget your gratefulness for whatever reason. But then my question is, how best to get in that state of gratefulness again, in spite of or while you're going through
this call has been terminated.
I don't know if that was clear or not.
Okay, yeah, well, it is. I understand the question. Yeah, we're working our
We'll get there.
we're working our way there.
Okay.
Yes, I'll be able to answer that
I'll
question. So, if I give you, and these are notes that I'm just looking over from the past. So, when a valuable gift is given to you freely, what takes place is all of a sudden in your heart, gratefulness spontaneously rises from your heart. All of us know that experience. That like feeling, it feels like your heart is fluttering a little bit. Okay, so happiness spontaneously rises from your heart. Okay, so not only do we have the grateful experiences, you can live gratefully, and that's what I'm talking about perpetually. As far as those opportunities, you can always be grateful. It's always a choice to be grateful. It depends on what you are actually, I guess, focus on and realizing what's there. Now, does that mean that you're grateful necessarily for every experience, like violence, mourning, bereavement, and things like that? No, that's not what that actually means, but it actually means that you still can be grateful spontaneously. Because everything that is provided by the Creator as a gift. Every single thing that we experience, everything that we go through life dealing with, everything is a gift given to you by the Creator. Hence, an opportunity. If you've been given the opportunity to enjoy the gift, to do something with it, the gift would mean nothing. That's what I'm saying. If you were given something without the opportunity to do something with it, giving an example, you wouldn't be grateful for it. So when I was talking about that, let's say if it's some house or a car or something like that, that your dream house or car, if I was to give it to you, but you had no access to it, you couldn't go to that house, or that particular car is in Antarctica and you have to go get it, but you can't get it, but it's still yours, you still received it. That's what I mean by it's the opportunity to enjoy the gift that actually makes you happy or gives you a joyous feeling, if that makes any sense. Okay. So that idea that opportunity knocks only once, that is not true. Opportunity is perpetual because you always have an opportunity to enjoy anything. There's no such thing as all the doors closing. Yes, one door may be closing, but it's impossible for all doors to actually close. It's almost like if you think about it, like a suction. If you have one room just filled up with doors, as one door closes, it's going to push another door open. It's just a matter of you being able to realize that and actually notice the other doors. Personally, a little while, and I'm having to constantly remind myself when certain things are not going well to just, or I don't perceive them to be going well, to just deal with it and realize that, okay, I can just not wrap my brain around what is actually happening here because I cannot see down a far enough time horizon. because constantly, every time when I have in the past thought that something was bad that actually took place, it actually ended up being good in the long run, the blessing in disguise, but I just didn't realize it. It's the same situation with the doors opening and closing. It's only because you're focused on that particular door that is closing that you do not realize that the other doors are opening. Whenever something closes, there's an opportunity somewhere else. It's just a matter of you realizing that and finding that other opportunity, or more so being patient for that opportunity to arrive and show itself. Any questions thus far? Go ahead.
Well, I would think, the way I reacted to what you just said is that I'm sitting here sketching out, you use the word timeline.
Yeah.
So you have two ways, I guess, to perceive where you are in the moment, that you're feeling not grateful for what's been given, occurred to you, or whatever. And if you're thinking linearly, hence a timeline, you're thinking future. And what we talk about in here, on any given time, is more, you're looking too microscopically, meaning were you to be more, in a sense, to make an image, above it, seeing it in a larger context, but in the immediate, you'd have a different perception. So you can either wait for the future, or you can pull back from what may be, you know what I'm trying to say? Too microscopic a view of what it is to perceive it in a larger context, which would change your perception of it.
Yes, and most of the times when we are thinking about something and we're not happy with the situation, most of the time, not always, but most of the times it deals with the outcome in the future. So that particular thing is not even occurring at that moment. But so Nick. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, I'm okay. How are you?
Hello, Nick.
Nick.
What else am I supposed to say?
Click on anywhere on the screen. No.
Oh, go back to Nick.
Go back right here. Click on this. Yes. All right. Now click. Right
Did I just disrupt the video?
No, you're
call?
fine. You're fine. Nick.
I'm getting skills, Nick.
You got on the job training.
Yeah.
Don't even
Click
worry about it.
there.
Yeah.
It's fine like that.
Just,
Okay.
oh, there we go. That's too big, isn't it?
Well, he's on there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's
Well, you
not
know,
really that
based
big,
on what,
is it?
based on what Richard just said, it is those very micro kinds of things. We think they're big things in our lives.
Yeah.
When things don't go right with us, we tend to dwell on them and look at them and focus on them, as you said. But one of the ways that we can immediately pull back is this issue of gratefulness. By saying, you know, God, this is happening right now and I'm in the midst of it, but you know what? I'm grateful that there's a bigger picture that I'm not seeing, but you see it and you're gonna let me see it when it's time for me to see it. And that kind of separates you from the immediacy of that thing or that experience, or it acknowledges that there is that you're not in it alone, acknowledging that the Creator is with you all the time you're going through it. But most of the time we don't do that. We just tend to think, why me? Why me? Why is this happening to me right now? I tried, me. And so gratefulness is the thing that you can always use to get the 30,000-foot look. Is what I think Richard said. Instead of the micro, it takes you further from the issue.
But I guess I think I know what you're trying to say, but I'd say it a little differently. And I connect it to something we said on the 14th, because I was just looking at a note. Hey, I actually get to use a note. Okay, anyway. Usually this is written in Sanskrit or something. Anyway, it seems to be. So the point is, if I were drawing you a picture, if you're thinking linearly and you're thinking into the future, the fact that the future isn't here, so to speak, exposes what might be insecurities or uncertainties that you have within yourself more readily. So actually that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if it creates anxiety, then you're presupposing an outcome that isn't there at all. It's just a possibility. But you're making it more of a reality. You're bringing it into this level of, this realm of reality, so to speak.
So you're
Okay?
acting on it as if it's the outcome when
Hence-
that could be a
hence-
totally different
Yeah,
one.
hence we say you can create that by your anxiety. So if you pulled back, so to speak, and we're looking at it from an altitude, to give you an image, you would see it as sort of a grain of sand on a beach kind of thing. And at that moment, so then you still have to deal with the result, the way it makes you feel. If it makes you see things in a larger context, so to speak, and you're much more calm, then there'll be a gratefulness that comes with the calmness. If I think you do that, and you still feel a certain discomfort, then all what you're exposing is, we were talking about on the 14th, what are you not open to? What confusion is still in you that doesn't let you feel that peace? So there's a lesson in either way. The question is, which one maybe has more of an opportunity for you to see yourself, to change by it, and that process may create in you, allow you to feel a certain gratitude. You know, we feel gratitude if something turns out, quote unquote, for the better, or if we have an opportunity to grow in it.
And I'm
Even
suggesting
if
we
the
can have
outcome
both.
isn't great.
I'm suggesting that people look at it both ways. I try to tend to look at it from the, yours describes a process of how you can get to that grateful feeling. And there's another way to look at it also. Be grateful right now.
Yeah.
Knowing without a doubt that whatever is transpiring is for your good, for your experience, for your growing, for your, just you know, it may not, I may still have the same feelings, Richard. I may still have some of the angst.
But the only thing I'm saying is I think I understand what you're saying.
I'm saying we can have both.
I'm just allowing for, that's a little closer to what you would traditionally hear in church.
That's escape.
Go home and be grateful. And you can't make yourself be grateful. It has to come out of you. So the only thing I'm saying is, you have to find out what's in you, right? And if the gratefulness is there, hold on to it, build on it, create more, so it's more of a, it becomes more of a reaction, if you want to call it that. But I don't see myself sitting there going, I'm grateful for the opportunity to suffer through this confusion.
Oh, no,
That's
no.
a kind of forced,
Yeah.
No,
it's
no.
kind of a forced thing. Now you're back into church when it's, you know, kind of get an
No, I'm a young church
Yeah,
fan.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's,
I mean, that's why I interpret what you're saying. But if you go through one or two of those experiences and find out where you are in that perception, linear, bigger, you can be grateful for the truth that that's revealing about yourself,
Mhm.
to tell you where you are, so to speak, and then that's an opportunity to grow.
But I'm suggesting that the church thing is so far in the past that it's this the
Well,
very nature of going through those experiences that at some point, some people are at the point already where they can be grateful, just knowing that it's still gonna be okay. So yeah, I see your point. If it was somebody in here who's a novice, you're right. They could have the misperception that, oh, it's easy for you to say that. But when I said it, just out was with the knowledge of being enlightened and understanding that all things work together and to truly understand what that means. I'm sorry, Ellen.
No. I was just gonna say, when you're dealing with situations, and everything that we do is a process, okay? When you are dealing with situations and you're saying, okay, God, I'm grateful because I know that I'm going through this for a reason. You don't care about the time. You don't care about where you are. You just in the now at that moment. You may not like what you're dealing with, but you do say, okay, God, I'm grateful. And I say that all the time. I'm dealing with stuff now, and I don't like the situation, but I say, God, I'm grateful. I don't care about what my outcome is going to be. I just know that I'm going through this for a reason. I can't look at it on an intellectual level. That's not what it's about right now. It's about me getting to where I need to be and being right now in the moment, dealing with what I'm dealing with.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ed.
And to piggyback on what Evelyn said, you can't look at stuff on an intellectual level. You got to look at stuff as, yes, I am grateful because I'm going through this. As bad as it may seem, first of all, you can't even look at it with your natural eyes. If you're looking at it with your natural eyes, you're wrong in the beginning. I mean, you just got to know, like, oh, well, this right here happened, so, but I already know it's handled, so what am I going to be upset for? Well, thank you. Cool. It's all over with. You know, game, set, match. Thank you.
Okay, the only point I was trying to make, and I'm not saying that anybody's saying anything different, it's just that that's a more classic way that we deal with it.
All right.
You're telling yourself, why are you saying thank you to God? What's God? Who's God? Where's this God you're thanking, and why does he or she need to be thanked? It's in you. You're thanking yourself. My point is, whether or not it's real and it genuinely coming out of you, as opposed to something you're kind of forcing to sort of make it happen, if you know what I mean.
That is
And
so
I'm not
true.
judging any of that, because all that does is tell you where you are in it. You know what I'm trying to say? If you're really grateful, you don't need to say anything. You'll feel it.
Exactly.
And sometimes I think traditionally when we say it, we're trying to sort of capture it in a bottle kind of thing. Make it happen by saying it, if you know what I mean.
Right. What I got from what you were saying
No.
But
is
it's not meaning it or not, it's just saying
Like-
where you are in it.
like sometimes you know how we say stuff to kind of make ourselves believe what we're saying. Is that kind of like more so what you're talking about?
I think that can be a big part of it, because that's why people walk around mumbling all day and
Yeah.
thank you Lord. No, I'm like,
No,
oh,
no,
like,
no.
okay.
So that-
Like people are always like, yeah, I'm a Christian, I'm this, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And why you gotta do all that, honestly?
Yeah. So, when I'm speaking about actually being grateful, it's not that you're in a particular situation and you're saying like you don't really believe it and you're psyching yourself out over, or trying to psych yourself out of it, that you're actually grateful for it. Everything that actually arises is an opportunity for you to, let's say for example, and this is going to be in the moment, if it was 19 degrees outside and there was actually no heat whatsoever in here. So that is something that's taking place in the moment. Right now, we are super cold. However, am I necessarily happy or grateful for the coldness? No, but there are many other things that are so much greater than that coldness that I can be happy for, or be grateful for. And so because I am grateful that it's snowing outside, so at least I'm in the shelter, so I'm not covered in snow as well. That's pretty much only thing that I am grateful for or not grateful for is based solely on my perception of what I decide to give power or give light to, which is my circumstances and what I focus on. That's right before we started, I was joking around and saying that I would never be cold again in South Carolina, only because I have experienced it being like in single digits and it's snowing and you not being able to cover your face. And I want to cover my face in New York, but I don't think that's necessarily a good idea depending on where I'm at. And it's just the snow is glistening to your face. So before leaving South Carolina, 32 degrees was terrible. It's freezing. Like water will freeze and turn into a solid. Now it's 32 degrees. Oh, it's warm outside. It's not snowing and the sun is out and it's 32, it's 31 degrees. So it's all of that changed. The conditions changed. Nothing changed in South Carolina. It was just the way that I perceived it and the way that I focused on it. I went from being cold in 31 to being literally happy in New York when it's 31 degrees. When it was like 31 degrees a few days ago, I didn't even have a coat on. I just had something on my head. I looked crazy, but that's what I mean. You have an opportunity, everything that arises, to not necessarily psych yourself out over that particular situation, but to change your focus. So it's more so of a practice and it's a continuous thing. And every single moment you have that opportunity to be grateful. That's what I mean by that.
Well, I think both scenarios, there are two scenarios. One is where people who go through that kind of thing and they have to determine if they're letting their ego get in the way, or what is their motive. But I think for us now, with the experience we've had of getting to know the Creator, even though we say it, it's not about ego, it's not about some motive that is about ego. It's about us reminding ourselves of who we are. But yes, you can have some people who will say, I'm grateful, just because they are letting their ego say that. Or they're putting on a front for somebody else, or they're trying to convince themselves, that they really are grateful, even though they're really not deep down inside. So I think both scenarios play a part.
Even that is a step that actually helps if you're at that point. Even that can help. Just like psychologically, if you smile or they had people to hold a pencil in their mouth, the act of making a smile on your face, automatically it works 1-on-1 to actually make you a little bit happier. So when someone is mad and they're like, has anyone ever experienced like someone would be mad, or usually it happens with a child, and you make the child smile, and that child will actually smile, and they will not want to do it at all. But just the act of them smiling and forcing that smile will make them feel a little bit better. It doesn't mean that they're going to automatically like just want to jump on you and hug and kiss you, etc. But just that small act alone is going to make them feel a little bit better than they were before. So that is true.
I mean, I agree with, and it's, pretty much both sides, but I think we've been playing with semantics a lot. We're looking at grateful. I said greater. There is greater. That's what we're talking about. Bump the gratefulness, bump the situations. There's greater. That's what you're thankful for. That's it.
That's it.
That's what I heard. That's it.
Go ahead, Nick. Nick, you about to say something?
Oh,
Yeah, you already made
I
your
was considering it. Can you all see me?
Yeah, we see you well, and we hear you well as well.
Okay,
Awesome.
good. I can't see you, but I mean, that's okay.
Okay.
You can't see us
So-
at all.
No,
No.
but
You have no picture?
no
Okay.
picture.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was just gonna say, so whenever you get into a situation where your ego rebels against the hidden purpose of that situation, which is essentially to make you stronger and to strengthen your connection to who and what you are, you have to find a way to circumvent what your ego is trying to do, which is actually the opposite of what your higher self intends for that situation to do for you. So when you say, I'm grateful, you may not be grateful, but be aware of, especially us in here. I know in a religious setting, people say that because they've been taught to say that, even though they might not feel it.
Right.
But the intent behind saying that, especially for us and what we're seeking, is to know that if you quiet your ego, then what your higher self intends for you to gain from that experience has the ability to come through in that experience, as opposed to simply giving into what your ego wants you to feel when you're in that situation. So it's kind of like just what Sheldon was saying. When you smile physically, it changes the way you think, even if you don't realize that's what's happening, even if you don't want it to, it will. And that's like that's the merging of a psychological and a physical principle. So when you say I'm grateful, that's kind of the same thing, only what you're trying to merge together is something that represents a shift in your attitude, which is spiritual, and the situation that you experience. So if you can merge those two, that is the situation and spiritual impulse behind it and the intent that your higher self has for you to be in that situation, then what you get from that situation changes. But it first requires a change in your attitude, which is why we say that. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Anyway. Does that make sense, though?
Yeah.
It's, saying the same thing in a different way, but yeah.
You have something?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Ms. Brown? You didn't have anything to say?
No, I was pointing, there were some hands over here before,
Oh, okay.
and Wilfredo was one, I think, at one point Evelyn was, but, and then Matt, so it's both. I'm good.
Oh, okay. I missed your hand, sorry. Okay. So on a macro scale, as far as gratefulness is concerned, and that means collectively it's all of us, not just in this room, but I mean macroly. What happens is once you are grateful with the way that we were just explaining and talking about, you're not fearful. Basically, I'm talking about the implication of humanity in the macro is what I'm talking about. And if you're not fearful, then you're not violent. And also, if you're grateful, then you have a sense of enough. You have a sense of enough, then of course you have no problem sharing. You're grateful and you have no problem with sharing, then go ahead, Matt.
Repeat that last part again.
Okay.
Right before you said if you something you have no problem with sharing.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna start off and explain both. So if you're grateful, you're not fearful. And with you not being fearful, you're basically you have a sense of gratitude, so you don't necessarily have a problem with the situation. So you embrace it, whatever it is that you're actually going through. So it actually switches from something that you don't want, that you more so embracing. And that's when you are, I don't want to say doing it very, very well, but that's when, for lack of better words, when you've gotten good at it. So you've had many experiences. So something that you don't want to go through, seemingly you don't want to go through, you're like, okay, I'm going through this for a reason, there's something good that's coming out of this, so I appreciate it. So you're not fearful. You understand that everything is good, you just don't realize it, essentially, maybe. So because of that, and you're not fearful, you're not violent. People are violent or think violent. People are violent basically because they're fearful of some outcome or something that they're trying to prevent, etc. So, gratefulness negates violence, essentially. Okay? Then the other part I was saying is if you're grateful, then you have a sense of enough. So you don't need to hoard, you don't need some resources that you need to go and gather or take from others, etc. Now you actually have the ability to share because you have more than enough. And so, even though it's very, very simple and basic what I'm actually speaking and talking about, how, let's say, as far as like our economic system works, etc., or how our government works, etc., these principles that I'm talking about would have a major impact on those, on how those things actually play out and how they're structured. So I'm just talking about something small and then talking about it blown up on a larger scale, on a macro level. Are there any questions or thoughts about what we've been talking about?
Thank you.
Well, I think the other thing that goes with it, sort of logical exposing of it, is even if it's back to that linear anxiety future thing, I think in each of those two perspectives, fearful versus grateful, let's say, your concept of self is different. I mean, all you have to ask yourself is, how do I feel when I'm in that moment? And I think you feel much more separated, isolated, and alone when you're fearful. Because I think that's part of the old instinct that's in your body.
Yeah.
Just like when you corner an animal, right? And you don't let them escape, what are they going to do? They don't think about they're part of a larger something. It's all just survival.
Yeah.
As opposed to the way, if you ask yourself, how am I feeling when you feel more relaxed, open, grateful? You're more connected, you're more accepting, there's less you in it, so to speak.
Yeah, you don't have problems
Okay?
with.
That's kind of what I was trying to say. So I think if you take that analogy and apply it to what you see going on around you, I think there are strategies in play that want to manipulate you, and those are the strategies that would try to get you to think of yourself as being more fearful, anxious, so you'd feel more isolated, smaller in that sense, because now you're weaker. If you can start applying all those terms, as opposed to sort of finding your way through it. But you have to recognize that that's, I suppose you can say, the game you're in,
And
and then you decide how you want to play the game, or whether the game's going to play you or you know what I mean?
Yeah, and each one of those things where you feel isolated, I mean, I didn't realize it when it happened before, but those in themselves are prime examples of opportunities for you to not feel, or to overcome
Right.
that feeling like an individual.
But
And
first
so
you-
now what is automatically happening once you've done that, because if you don't do it, it's just another opportunity that's going to arise for you to actually get like that level. So it's going to keep happening. It's going to show its way, of course, in a different form, but it's going to keep happening basically until you achieve that level. And once you achieve that level, achieving that level is realizing that you are, for lack of better words, bigger than that of what you thought.
Yeah.
You said if you're grateful, you have a sense of enough. Is it fair also to say then if you're grateful, you have a sense of no lack?
That's,
Same
yes,
thing.
yes, definitely.
My question is, tie those two together, Ms. Barber?
Mhm.
The sense of, if you're grateful, not having a lack, meaning that given moment.
Right, if you're grateful, you have a sense of enough. What Sheldon said was, if you have a sense of enough, then you don't feel like you gotta hoard and you don't feel like you gotta store up. In other words, it puts you in the mode to be able to share, because you don't feel like you gotta keep it all to yourself.
Okay.
Same thing with the sense of, if you have a sense of no lack, that says then that if I don't feel like I'm lacking anything, I also have the ability to share. And not that you have the ability to, I believe not only do you have the ability, but you gotta act on that ability. You can't just.
Well, yeah. What's going to end up happening is if you have, if you don't have a sense of lack, then you're automatically going to be moved to share
Yeah.
what you have automatically.
But
That's
you're
just
also
something
not
that's
thinking
going to
about
happen naturally.
You're also, like Richard was saying, you're not thinking about down the road, in the future.
No.
You're, okay, that's,
And that
that was
goes
my
back to
the
the
moment,
devil.
you're in the
See,
moment.
I guess that's
It's
what I
like
meant
a
about thank you
smile.
God, and I'm so grateful. It's just going to come out of you. And
Exactly.
you've already felt it before you've thought it, before you've expressed the words. So if it helps to reaffirm it, okay, but it's already there. I mean, and the quote unquote, the forces that be, they know your intent before it comes out of your mouth, right? The question is, what do you know? Well, that's it. You're talking to yourself. That's why I said you're looking in the
Yes.
mirror.
So Nick
You're
can see.
confirming for yourself,
Where
yes,
do
I
go
felt
on
that.
there?
Yes.
And if you do that 1,000
Can you
times,
let
you'll
Nick
start,
know that I'm
you'll
not-
maybe more and more
Move
have to
back
say
over
that
so I can
less,
do
because
that?
you'll trust, you'll have that connection and you'll trust.
Because you can't see anything, it wouldn't matter.
Okay.
But I think Sheldon's point's good, important. You have to decide now not to go with the feeling, instinctive feeling you have, because that's what you are at your core, right? Goodness. To be good and share. You have to make a conscious, no, I'm not going to. Now you've started the game going another direction. But it's just in you to do it. Even if somebody responds in a way, and you're more likely if somebody comes back at you, so to speak, with an attitude, you're like, well, okay. Right? And we've been through those, or we've seen people act that way all the time. It doesn't change what they're doing, they just, I'm okay.
And yeah, there's one more thing that I actually want to say, and it's, I guess you can call it a universal principle, I don't know, but automatically as well, it's kind of the same thing where we're talking about a little bit off. When we, if you ever do feel down and out, etc., the act of helping someone else or making someone else happy or giving them fulfillment or joy, etc., because you're automatically connected to that person, whether you realize it or not, that is a big help in bringing you up and bringing you out of your situation or your perceived situation as well. We receive something tremendous by helping others, but when you're helping others and you're doing it in a genuine way, you are doing wonders for yourself. I mean, I don't really know how to explain it and put it in words, but yeah, that actually, it takes place.
It can be.
Well, yeah, if you're being selfish, I mean, when I say that, it means that you're doing it freely and you're doing it.
Yeah,
You're literally
yeah,
doing it out of your
yeah.
heart. Yeah, you're doing it out of your heart for that other person.
Yeah, well, I mean,
So it's
the
actually
only reason I
genuine.
can play with the phrases is because it's all back to the intent.
Yeah.
You can't characterize the intent with words, you just have to feel that and know that yourself. Because we know people, do we not, in our lives, that spend so much time caring about everybody else that you wonder if they're not doing it to neglect themselves because they don't want to deal with themselves. And you can't, right? If you don't take care of home, you can't take care of the community, kind of thing. That's what those old folk sayings are all about. Got to take care of yourself first. But again, if you want to see that the wrong way, it sounds very selfish. But you can't help somebody else from weakness. You can find strength in helping them, or you help them from a strength in yourself. So anyway, you can play with those words any way you want, but at the end of the day, it's what's the intent behind the action. Voila.
So it's about the intent. It's all about the intent.
Any other thoughts or questions in regards to gratefulness?
So if you have someone and it's from the intent of your heart, and let's say that you're grateful, you know how you're doing, but that person is not grateful.
Well, it doesn't matter as far as that other person, because what matters, the only thing that you can actually be concerned about is what you do and your intent. And the other thing is, if you do something for that person, you have to allow them to react or receive or deny whatever you're doing, but that's their choice. So you have to allow them to do that freely and not be attached to it. So we've talked about before, let's say what's important is how it comes from you, your intent, and how it comes from your heart. And with that happening, it has to be free. So for example, if someone was homeless, okay, and that particular person were to ask for $10 and I would give them $10, and let's say if I wanted them to go and get some food, and let's say they went and purchased some alcohol for it or whatever, well, I didn't give them that $10 if it made me upset because I had preconditions on that money and wanted that money to be used for a specific thing. So now I'm controlling that gift or that resource and how they actually use it. If I just want them to have it and want them to be able to do whatever it is that they want to do with it that brings them the most fulfillment, enjoyment, or whatever, then I just give it to them. Then whatever they do with it, that's on them. That's basically all of us are kind of like on a journey on finding ourselves and growing, etc. So there's no telling where that's going to take them, but you have to give it freely. You cannot be attached to them being grateful. All of us have received things, even from, let's say, our parents and how we grew up, etc., that we were not grateful for either. So at some point in time, all of us have been ungrateful for something that we should have been grateful for that was given by another.
Yeah, I'm gonna share like something that happened last night. Me and Brian was out at Walmart, right? We ran into 3 occasions, and all this goes along with intent. Right? 3 people who had vehicle problems. One lady, her intent was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna know you," and not stop and say, "Oh, ma'am, you alright? You need any help?" And this one guy, he was already working on the car, trying to get the car to work, right? He said, "Oh." I was like, "No, I don't think I know." "Oh, well, you can buy this piece of junk. I mean, yeah, you can." I'm like, "No, I don't know you, man. I'm like, if you need some help, I'll help you." Her intent was trying to get me to buy this truck that wouldn't work. I was like, "No, thank." But you know what? She didn't get nothing solved. The guy that was working on it said, "Can't help you with it, man." So the truck sat there. Second occasion, there was this other guy working on his Honda. Helped him out. He got running right away, did his thing. It took some time, but he got running. But he was very grateful, very polite. He said, "Oh, by the way, I thank you guys so much. It's out here, you guys are out here in the cold. Really appreciate it. Oh, I'm so grateful for you guys." And you know, he stood up there and he was very grateful, happy. You know, on his way. This third occasion, you know.
No, I'm listening.
Okay. On the third occasion, where this other couple, and as she called the pregnant lady, you know, their car was pretty much broke down, and they're like, "Oh well, can we get a boost?"
Please enter your conference
I was
code
like,
now.
"No, this little car's not gonna do that one for that vehicle." I said, "You need to get another battery." He was like, "Well, we don't have no money. We're broke." I said, "Well, you can get a jump box."
Foundation.
I was like, "You can go to Walmart and get a jump. We're broke." So I proceeded to go to Walmart to buy a jump box, and I was like, "Hold up. These jokers just stand out here, didn't offer to buy nothing, didn't offer to come with me." I was like, "I'm not feeling this junk." And B's like, "Either, man, I'm not." They didn't do nothing. So we walked back out. We didn't buy anything. We walked back out. Somebody else was trying to give them boost. I heard it from her. I was like, "Dude, that car is not gonna start at all. The battery's totally dead." And it was like, so they were stuck. And I say all that because the people who motives and intent were way out there, they got left out there. The guy who was grateful and his intent, he was pure at heart, he was on his way. That's why I shared it. It's all about intent.
The thing is, though, it's not only about the intent of the other person. When it's you, it's also about
energy
your
you
intent.
bring.
Your intent.
Mhm.
And so that's how
Sure.
So someone on the phone?
Yep.
Okay. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Nope.
Okay.
Yep. Nope.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I wasn't sure. Okay. So, Yeah, so that was, anything else on that, on gratefulness? So, yeah, from the beginning, I forgot to ask, was there any questions about anything else that was spoken in any subsequent weeks that anyone, or anything that was going on that someone wanted to ask about? Miss Barbara? I'm finished.
Okay, we've got a couple minutes, and I want to just do something in Thomas. We've hit on it before, but, and this is saying 114. And I'll get it in a minute. 114, let's see,
You want me to read it for you?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, Simon Peter said to them, "Let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life." Jesus said, "I myself shall lead her, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males. For every woman who will make herself male will enter into the kingdom of heaven."
Okay. And we've been talking off and on for a long time now about the issue of the male energy, masculine energy, and feminine energy. And when people read this, they think about male and female. They think about the form and the name, the material, the physical, male and female. And so it's difficult then to understand what Jesus is saying when he says that every woman who will make herself male will enter into the kingdom of heaven. Because that's what we think about. From a spiritual perspective then, the reason this came up is in those days in the Palestinian region, Middle East, as well as some areas today, women weren't thought of at all very much. They were thought of as less than less, as unworthy, and their worth was only attached to the man, the physical man in their life. So there was not a lot of worth given to women. And so if in the physical that women were not perceived as worthy, you can imagine in the spiritual, from the spiritual perspective, for those people, where they were. Because you have to remember that the physical is a manifestation of what's going on internally. And so if actually, literally, in the physical, women were less than nothing, in the spiritual, they were thought of in that same way as well. Does that resonate? We create. Yes. The physical is created out of the spirit, out of where we are in the spiritual. So, gosh, I lost my space. Okay, I'm here. At the time, the woman had no legal rights as it relates to a man or anybody else. There was a time here when women couldn't vote. I mean, everything was a creation of what was going on internally, spiritually. It was unheard of for a woman to study those mystical things, those hidden things. Usually it was said that only a man, and it was a man after he became, what I forgot the age. And if you remember, it was a certain age, only a man could study mystical things.
Nick said 40.
40. So women did not have access. Now think about this the reminder of who Adam was in the garden. Adam had both energies in it.
Yes.
In it, right? Mm-hmm. Feminine as well as masculine. Think about what happened when Eve was taken from Adam, and you began with duality. Our mission today is to combine or recombine or reunite those physical, those spiritual, those masculine and feminine energies. And in Kabbalah, the masculine is not thought of as a gender, just like the female is not thought of as a gender. The masculine is the one who shares, who gives, and the feminine energy is thought of as receptivity, receiving. That's what it means really spiritually. And so it's not about gender, it's not about female versus male. So when we were created, when the atom was created, the atom, before the atom left the garden, the issue was received for the purpose of sharing, but that never happened. When the Eve was taken from Adam, what did Adam say? This is now bone, my bone, flesh, and my flesh, and took ownership, in a sense, of the woman. Not, okay, we complement each other. We are here for a purpose. Together we can accomplish the purpose, the spiritual goal that the Creator has in mind for us. What's none of that anymore. And so that's part of the road that we share today. And it's only when women are redeemed, in a sense. And when I say redeemed, I mean, we've been talking about our perceptions and our attitudes today. And it's got to be us who does it with a change of perception and belief and attitude. And that's the kind of thing that we've been putting in the macro all along for a while now. And that's why you see people responding to changes. That's why you had that world conference in the Middle East that you would never have had before. So now the time is being right, is becoming more right to do that. And so what Jesus is saying is that at the time when a woman receives the mystical training, and we have that option now, we're not only receptacles, we're only receptacles while we're receiving. But you know, the other thing he was saying was, it's not just the woman who's the receiver. When you're learning mystical things, when you're learning spiritual things from the start, the receiver is always that feminine energy inside you. Does that flow?
Yeah.
So it's not meant just for the physical man and woman, it's speaking to the spiritual. And as long as we're receiving, that's that feminine part that's receiving. The issue too is that we can't just receive. It's got to ignite that lighter divinity in us, and based on that, we gotta have that desire and that will to share what we receive. And therein lies the issue. Giving and receiving. Giving and receiving. And when I receive for the purpose of just keeping it myself, I'm still living in a tree of knowledge mentality. Tree of good and evil, I'm sorry. Knowledge of good and evil. But when I receive for the purpose of, okay, now I got it. And I can't keep it to myself. I have to share that with someone else. That's when you remember on the tree of life we have those two columns and there's a center column. That's when the center column, that's when they mesh. That's when there's a reconnecting. When the motive is not selfish. And so that's what Jesus was talking about when he was talking about, okay, this woman will be made male. Meaning, I will have that same capacity. Anybody. And he only used women because they brought up women and because the way women were treated. But again, it's talking about people in general. The male is the female. The female is the male. We all have testosterone. We all have estrogen in us at the same time. And so he's going beyond what they're thinking and trying to take them out of the boundaries of their minds and say, this relates to everybody. And the important part of that is not just who's giving and not just who's receiving, but who's sharing with that which was given. That's the important thing. So when, gosh, how did I do that, man?
I can add something to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just about receiving for the purpose of giving. When you get to the point where you're able to draw from your spirit and interpret for yourself the impulses that it is giving you, the more you do that, the more you will become aware of the fact that you have to give it. It's not an option. And you cannot make progress anyway unless you do. Because there are two sides to the same coin, teaching and learning. One is giving and one is receiving. You cannot have one without the other. And I think that is partially for the purpose of, well, the fact that what you receive is not solely for you, because you are not the only you.
Exactly.
And the other half of that is, if you receive a certain amount and you fill up, quote unquote, you reach your capacity for being able to handle what it is that you currently know, you cannot receive anymore unless you give it and open up space for new stuff to come in. So in that process, your ability to, your capacity increases so that you can receive more and give more. But it won't happen unless you keep that energy flowing.
Gotcha. The other thing to remember is the timing and the culture, and to liken it to something that happens today. If you can imagine what Jesus saying this was like in his time, just think about what it's like for a gay person now. For us to say, for us to blatantly say, you can't discriminate against a gay person or a lesbian because of who they are. I mean, that's like saying, that's similar to what it was like for him to say that in his time. In other words, we got to get away from the herd mentality. The herd mentality is to do what conventional society would have us do, to think like conventional society would have us think. And the thing that we have to think with is the wisdom of the Creator, because that's, we are those new creations in a sense. Once we have awakened that, once that spirit of divinity has awakened in us, that seed of divinity, it's not good enough. It's not good enough to go with the herd mentality anymore. If we do that, we fall back. It is not, we go against the grain, if you will. And the grain is always those people in the majority. But the people in the majority are not necessarily right. Andre?
Well, I want to ask, when you said something about females becoming male, can you elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, I know it means, well, I know what I think it means, but anyway, can you elaborate a little bit?
Females becoming male has nothing to do with gender.
Right.
It has everything to do with the intent of the masculine and feminine energies.
Mm-hmm.
The masculine energy is usually that which gives, that which provides. The feminine energy is usually that which receives. And it doesn't matter if you are a male or a female, literally. What's important is that all of us who are receiving the wisdom and knowledge, we are feminine in terms of our energies.
Mm-hmm.
We're receivers.
In order to receive.
As while we're receiving from the wisdom of the Creator, we're feminine in terms of not the way we look, But the
But in terms of the our role in the spiritual intercourse that's taking place.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I asked the question because I always think about it in terms of Jesus was literally speaking to males at the time.
Mhm.
But because it's been passed down, he's also speaking to females. And I think he's saying to the males, basically, you've got to get out of the way and let them. In the sense that they have to forego their ego in terms of their maleness and their role in society. I think he's speaking to females in terms of also same thing. You've got to let go of this idea of who you think you are and who you've been told you should be, so that you can take on this receptivity, this willingness to receive, so that you can then share. So I think he's speaking to both.
I agree.
I agree.
The hidden message in that was what you said. The hidden message is it's not about who you are and the role you think you are playing in this society. The hidden message that he was saying is that it's about receiving, it's about giving and receiving and then sharing what you received. That's what it's, that's the culmination of what it's all about. And followers of the Christ, if they truly understand that, and when they truly understand that, that will play out in the physical, in terms of the way women are perceived.
Yeah.
So the woman becomes a man,
Yeah.
in terms of what Jesus was talking about, when she is at that point where she's received and then she gives too.
And the man becomes a woman because he steps back to allow it to happen. So it balances.
And he can receive from her.
Yeah.
I have a question. So when you say the man steps back, in my mind what you're saying is that they have to be willing to be receivers too. Okay.
They have to understand that they are receivers.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
they
gotta
are
be-
receivers,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, but being willing is one part of it, but even more than that, just knowing that I am a receiver.
Okay.
And that takes a bit,
I just wanted to comment about the scripture says, give and it shall be given unto you. So it's almost like you give and you become a receiver because it comes back to you. So
It's
you become a
automatic,
receiver.
isn't it?
Shall I read that scripture one more time?
Yeah, this is from the Gospel, Thomas?
Yes, the Gospel of Thomas, the last
Saying
verse,
114.
114.
And it's interesting that this is the last saying in Thomas too.
Is there an equivalent in the Biblia?
I haven't, not that I can think of offhand.
I mean, the reason I think I asked that question
It's
is
easy and balanced.
Because what
because
this,
in the conventional setting and understanding, there's that whole thing about women's roles, things like that. So I just wondered, that always comes from a particular scripture, right? So if this was somehow
I
analogous,
don't know of anything that's comfortable in the
oh, follow your
traditional-
husband or whatever it
because
is.
even, yeah,
Paul Corinthians.
Oh, I thought you meant not the woman's role, but the opposite of that, which is what we're talking about.
yeah, because how I,
No, well, I was gonna say, read it again, because the surface understanding can be misunderstood in the way that the other, I just wanted to, you know what I'm trying to say, if there's one in the quote unquote, okay, Paul, this, the wordings are not so dissimilar. If you're talking to somebody who's more grounded in Paul, in a conventional Christian setting, how do you bring into the discussion some other interpretation?
verse 114 says, Simon Peter said to them, let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life. Jesus said, I myself shall leave her, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males. For every woman who will make herself male will enter into the kingdom of heaven.
And what I perceive is even in him talking to them, you can automatically tell in how he's phrasing his words that he's, in a sense, talking down to them because they are very, very low on this concept. He speaks more freely with a lot of the other things in Thomas than this right here. So you can automatically tell, like, this is a hot button topic. Like, they clearly do not think much of women at all. So he's having to reach them where they are, which is why I don't think you would really find something of its equivalence in the traditional Bible at all. Because this right here is the most radical, probably one of the most radical things in all of Thomas, according to the disciples that he's actually teaching this to. You got me? Women are not worthy of life. That says a lot.
What I kept hearing throughout this whole thing is balance.
That's what it is.
That's it.
So something that I got from James Richard, and I thought about something else with what Ms. Barbara was saying and with what Nick said. So he I'm not sure if it is his quote or not, but the most difficult lesson to learn or to live is the lesson that you teach. And that quote or that saying is very, 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 very extremely powerful to me. And so what we were talking about, and because I know, so Nick was talking about giving and receiving as far as the balance is concerned with male and female, the Adam. Earlier today we were talking about, when we first came here, we were talking about gratefulness. And with my personal progression of being grateful and the perceived struggles that I have gone through and not realizing or not being necessarily grateful for those things at the time, the thing that I encounter the most with the people that I interact with is, from me, going through a perceived struggle, receiving something that I definitely learned from it, and being able to give it back to help others constantly. And so now it seems like, well, not seems like it is, like literally every single thing, no matter how bad it may have been perceived or others may perceive it, that I actually went through, I'm extremely grateful for it now because I'm helping others and I'm able to give through my experience and kind of guide them or you know, to maneuver through the situation, get ahead of it, etc. And that, when I was talking about, and I did not see all the connections before, but that when I'm talking about you becoming happy when you give to others, that brings me great, tremendous joy to actually do that. And it all came from all of these struggles, like a whole bunch of struggles. So they're giving and receiving. So you're receiving all the time. Sometimes you don't realize it, or sometimes you are not being receptive to it. It comes in a lot of different packages. It's not always just it doesn't always just come in a bow wrapped up.
Brian, you brought the point of the Bible, which says, "Give and it shall be given unto you," and the issue is that reception is only as good as you giving, you imparting something to someone else. And we've always talked about how the energy flows. It's not stagnant.
Yeah.
And if you're continuously giving, you're going to be continuously receiving. And
it's like a law of nature. You have to, it's a giver, so you have to have something to give. You cannot run out of something to give.
And that giving is not just money. It's probably money is at the lowest of the list. Mm-hmm. It's whatever that individual. It's like we were saying, Lord Jesus Christ manifested light of breath of the breath of life that delivers from and provides all that's needed. That's when we get to the point where we walk in that Christ consciousness. Because whatever we have, whatever that individual needs, we can impart it, we can give it. And the energies keep flowing. And whatever the next person needs, we'll receive so that we can also share that. And if everybody is doing that, that means I'm going to get that I need, but somebody's going to share that with me too. So that's the balance. That's the give and get of it all.
So the lack comes in when we dam up that energy of giving and receiving. When we start hoarding the energy
It's
we've
like
got.
a kink in the, you know how when the water is running through the holes and you kink it back so it cannot, that's what happens. In a sense.
Well,
I,
yeah, okay.
And there's that lack doesn't exist. Notice
Right.
we said a perception of lack.
Right.
Yeah, lack does not exist.
for as the womb, where does the womb take place in all this? I think and know, but
What do you mean the
kinda
womb?
keep seeing the womb.
Okay,
The
well,
womb.
if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, the womb nurtures. If you look at it from Bina is understanding it, it serves as that womb that begins to give things its quote unquote spiritual shape and form.
I'll tell you what else I was saying. So the womb, whereas the female, the feminine aspect of it, being able to receive, I was seeing that. And the masculine portion being the giver. And then right there, that's why I was like, okay, why is that part? I'm like, okay, I see the giving, the receiving. I'm like, okay, but on the spiritual concept, I'm like, okay, I hear all the physical, but I'm still. What is the spiritual concept? That's battling around in my head.
It nurtures the ideas and the concepts and the thoughts that are given from the Creator. That's from a spiritual perspective. And so what's delivered, what's born, should be those things in line with.
Birth.
What's born.
Birth.
Those
The
things
rebirth.
in line with.
Thank you.
With Christ consciousness.
No, you said something. You don't even know what you said.
I'll add
You
to
understand
that.
it?
I'll add to that. It seems like it goes back to being grateful again, because if you're aware of the ebb and flow of giving and receiving, and you're allowing yourself to stay in the balance of being a giver and a receiver, you can stay in a place of gratefulness, because no matter what situation you're in, you know that you're gonna eventually be back in a place of giving or receiving, so you don't have to worry about lacking anything, because you know the natural ebb and flow is always going to put you where you need to be, it seems like.
You're always where you need to be.
You're always
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
good point.
And
Never enough.
what gratefulness is, is you not blocking that flow.
Yeah, that's another way to say that, yeah.
Because with what Brian just said, I was thinking you go from thinking that sooner or later I'm going to get back to this perceived good area or good spot,
Okay, yeah,
to
right.
then realizing that you're constantly already in that
Yeah.
good spot. And that's what I realized when I was saying what I said about, I thought I was like in this bad spot, but I was in a great spot. I just didn't know that I was in a great spot at the time.
Yeah, I see that too.
Reminds me of
So
Not being
then, to try to tie this together a little bit with what Nick just said, made me think, so you're not grateful for something, it's something that releases gratefulness in you.
we can look at it like that.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's the
Men them knowing.
the state of gratefulness that you try to cultivate in you. So
Real God, son. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
No, well, I'm not, you understand what I just said?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not grateful for something, it's the something that allows you to feel, if you want, grateful.
Yeah.
It's released that. Otherwise, you're back to putting it in a box, making it stagnant, and now you're trying to stop the energy. Thank you for that. You're not grateful for that. Everything we said in here is everything challenges or opportunities, so that was an opportunity
Yeah.
for releasing within you. Okay?
Other questions about, get back to it. This is only the surface of this. A lot of what we've talked about has been part of this in the past when we talked about the concept of the masculine, feminine energies. But there's so much more, and as we need it, it will reveal itself.
And I don't know if Richard was saying this or not a little while ago when he was talking about someone, Jesus telling them this is the equivalent of what you would consider telling the same thing to someone that is very, very religious, in a very, very religious setting and already have their minds made up about this particular situation, because he was very, very tactful in how he said what he said.
But he almost tied it back to himself. That
Yeah.
you can't believe in me unless you believe what I say.
Yeah.
And this is what I say about this issue.
Yes.
Oh, but I guess what was behind my question was, so you're talking to a Catholic, so he's saying, isn't the new Pope wonderful, right? But now we're back to, the Catholic Church still has this notion of masculine and feminine that suppresses, if you want, controls, channels, manipulates the feminine to be dominated by. So that's coming out of Paul, that's coming out of something. We say the Catholic Church is basically Paul's church. So how do you ask the questions of somebody with that mindset, so to speak, to help them? I'm not saying tell them, I'm saying how do you ask questions that are useful to them to change their understanding of that? If you're in a genuine dialogue with somebody.
You have to meet them where, like, there's no key that we can just say. You just, in that situation, have to meet that person where they are.
Where you
With
are.
how you, I mean, where both of you are.
Yeah.
And so
Well-
it's not going to be like some cookie cutter thing to say, because they're only going to be receptive to a certain extent.
It's always gonna be about where they are in
Yeah.
terms of their own seeking. I mean,
And
there's nothing you can really say,
No, but you'll find out,
They-
it also.
unless they are at a point where they are actually seeking.
Why do you lose arguments when you know you're right? Because to a
Why
certain
do you
extent, that conversation is also, is an opportunity for you to know the depth of that correctness in your view, right? So if you can't, I'm suggesting if you don't necessarily offer useful questions or suggestions, you might have, it might not be a bad thing to figure out why not within you. And maybe your quote-unquote understanding isn't as complete as you want to believe it is. You know what I'm saying?
True, but when the
Because we all walk around thinking we know more than we do.
when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Okay.
I like that
What
one.
phrase I say I know.
I like that one.
I'm not saying that it's just a phrase.
Yeah.
When the student is ready, the teacher can be themselves
Yeah.
or their connection with the Creator.
When they're ready to receive.
Because
Yeah.
all of us have been in a situation where most of the stuff we hear on here on a regular basis, we would not have been receptive to before, and we would all thought that all of us were going to hell.
Wackos.
So, I mean, yeah, it's just based upon it's no cookie cutter way. You only can reach someone, and it also depends on your intent as well. Because if in your heart, you are being a teacher in that moment. If you're being a true teacher, you're only concerned with that person. It's not about your ego. It's not about yourself at all. So you're automatically going to meet them without trying at their level. You're not going to just tell them something to make them feel stupid or ignorant, not intentionally anyway. So, yeah.
No, I mean, I didn't mean to suggest, although.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying, I wasn't
I mean,
saying
if
that
you respond by trying to dominate and win the conversation, that's telling me something about me
Yeah.
that maybe I need to think about, as
Well-
opposed to opening up the other perspective by thoughtful questions.
Yeah.
I mean, why is the Zen concept of the koan so powerful? Because it's all questions, it's not answers. The answer's in there, and the teacher can't give you the answer. And in fact, I would even say we gotta get to the point where the teacher doesn't appear, the conduit that allows the teaching to be employed appears, which is why the truly, I think,
That's the seeking.
the truly understanding person is ego-less. Don't call me a teacher. Don't make me a great individual. Don't fill my life with those distractions and those temptations. I'm delivering the message.
But yeah, I agree, but the conduit is the seeking, it's the asking the questions. And you can't get people to that point, they have to get there themselves.
You don't know that. You can ask a question and somebody goes, "What?" And then on the way home, a light goes on. Right? We said that earlier about helping people and they deny, they resist or whatever, and then you don't know. So you can't judge.
Well,
You're
here's a
sealing the possibility by judging.
Richard asked earlier if that was Thomas 1:14
Mhm.
that you read, if that's like in our Bible. Is that relative to 1 Peter 3 where he's telling them, where he's saying to them, in the same way if your wives must respect the authority of your husband. It goes on to talk about, if they have questions, you should be able to the head of the household should be able to answer it.
Yeah, that's
Your godly lives will speak. It goes on to say your godly lives will speak to them better than any words. They will be won over by watching your pure godly behavior. Is that kind of thinking back in that time that women weren't really, held at the same level as men? Is that kind of what it's saying from Thomas? Does it
Peter, what? 3 and what?
1 Peter chapter 3.
Oh, okay.
In the same way, you husbands must give honor to your wives. Treat her with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. I'm not sure what version that is, but is that kind of the same
Kind of.
part of the concept Thomas is talking about?
Kind of.
In a sense, yeah, but Peter didn't go all the way, because the question I have is that, in the final analysis, why can we believe that the Christ incarnated as a man, but we can't believe that the Christ can incarnate as a woman?
Okay. So Peter wasn't.
You
referenced Paul, so obviously, I guess what was behind my question was if I'm talking to somebody and, you know the structure of the conventional Christian church, you know the role women play in the church, traditionally. Maybe now you have churches that have sort of modified that. This whole idea that women has a place, the feminine has a place, and it's subservient, seemingly, to the male. At least that's the way a lot of men act, right? Certainly heard those stories since I've been here for the last 8 years. So all I wondered was, so you're in conversation with somebody, and they're referring to Peter 1:3, or they're referring to Paul what? And I'm not saying you counter with Thomas 1:14, but you're asking them questions to challenge their understanding of that based on, let's say, your understanding of Thomas, which I have no argument with that could be more complete. The whole point is getting the other misunderstanding to a more open and deeper level of truth.
And
Right.
part of that happens when we are putting things in the macro, because that's what begins to open people up to even have the conversation in the first place. I mean, a lot of the conversations that have become available to us would not have been available before, because people would not even have opened their ears long enough to even have the conversation. So that's the getting it in the macro. It's like preparing the garden, if you will, preparing the soil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then when you have that opportunity and you ask a question and you go, la 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 la, I don't want to hear it, you back up and you say, okay, not ready, not ready. Or it may be somebody that you can ask them a question. Well, what do you mean by so and so, just to see where they are. And they may ask you, well, what do you think? And that's when you give them what you believe. And if it looks like they are not receptive, that's when you back up again. You don't just waste your wisdom. People have to be ready. They have to be ready. Like we had to be ready.
Yeah.
And so part of this discussion today is putting more of that in the macro. And there are going to be those of us that the issue of bringing this up comes up. The door opens to begin that discussion or to continue that discussion with someone. So I'm suggesting, Richard, that a lot of what we talk about in terms of the way the church is, that a lot of that won't happen here on this plane. It'll happen in the spiritual. In terms of the doors will begin to open in the spiritual. In terms of what we put in the macro. And the questions will come automatically because of that. So, did y'all answer my question about Christ incarnate as a female? Is that possible?
Repeat it, please.
Christ incarnate,
No.
if Christ can incarnate as a male, can Christ incarnate as a female? If there's neither Greek nor...
But wouldn't the answer be no? Christ is not either, but both.
All right. So if Christ incarnated as a male once, can Christ incarnate as a female once?
Can the Christ, in maybe all
I'll
that
say
that
yes.
means, be embodied in a female
Do anything.
person? Why not?
Yes.
And I guess, and even, that's
Well, even the
blasphemy,
answers
that's
are-
blasphemy you're speaking. Question is blasphemous, given the conventional
Make mine
wisdom
a
of this culture.
Make mine a capital B.
Make mine double.
But that's the
Unless you're
understanding.
gonna burn me at the stake, in
We,
which case.
we have to
Retract my
think of that in order to get beyond this thing about roles, et cetera, et cetera. That those energies complement each other. that they work together. That the giver needs a receptor. Otherwise, what does the giver give to? And so those energies have to be together in order for Christ consciousness to come into being. That's all this is saying. It's saying more, but in my lesson today, that's what I'm saying. Other questions? I'm done. There's no inequality in terms of male and female. There is something that both energies bring to the quote-unquote proverbial table of life.
And
That's
it's-
required and
Yes, I was
necessary.
about to say that it's actually essential.
Mhm.
My granddaughter wanted to say something. You wanna say
Yes.
it?
Yes, God is not a male or female, and he's the one that created this world.
So, thank you. Not a male or female.
Thank you.
See the problem with the language though? we don't have a, what's that, pronoun? It, what's left? It?
Yeah, but she did pretty good.
No, no,
Giving
no.
effect is
Of course.
not a male or female. Both.
These are rich.
Anything else?
Any other questions, thoughts?
You should.
Okay.
Well, we're finished. Back to you, Ms. Barr.
The truth of the light and the light of truth reminds us that we are all one. That our energies, masculine and feminine, are the same and are meant to be joined. Amen.
Amen. Bye, Nick. Or are you gonna stay on for a while?
I'm gonna go.
All right.
All right,
Have a good day.
thanks for the cookies.
Oh, one time, right.
So nice to hear you back.
Cookies.
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh, and the top 100 recently.
Good. How about yours? How twins?
What I have to tell
No,
you.
wait, I hadn't stopped broadcasting or anything.
I tell you.
Oh, it feels good.
I'll talk to you later. Okay, sweetie.
Okay, guys. Matt, thanks for the treats. Appreciate